This is the moment. This is the moment the Bengals became one of the biggest focal points of discussion in the NFL. What's up, guys? It is Josh Butts here from No Butts About It. And Shemar Stewart is signed. Finally, he's the final first rounder to sign his deal. He finally did it at like 10 o'clock last night on a Friday, which just made the situation even more annoying. But let's talk about this contract. Let's talk about how we got to this point and what I think about all of it. So I haven't really talked about this at all on the channel because, at least at an in-depth level, because there was a ton of misinformation out there, fake news, if you will, about what was going on, and I don't think people actually knew what was going on, and I didn't want to add to that and contribute to that and just cause more confusion. So, but I've got the facts here. I know what's going on. And if something just I'm not confident about, I will be open about that with you guys. So, Shemar Stewart got drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. We know that. Um, we know that he'd been holding out of practice. There was this thing originally where people said that he was holding out for more money, which that isn't true because the Bengals can't give him more money. The way the NFL draft works is the contracts are pretty much already set, at least by their amount, based on where you get picked. However, the Bengals can use language to figure out like when you'll get what money and when and how and all that. So there's some nuances that the Bengals can do with the contract, but they can't set like the actual amount of money you're gonna get. So anyway, that part wasn't true. There, there were just a ton of really dumb rumors out there about just what was going on, that he was gonna go back to college, that he was gonna re-enter the draft next year. Just all this stuff that some of it wasn't even possible, some of it wasn't going to happen, just very clearly if you thought about it. But the holdout lasted into training camp for a few days. Luckily, only missed a few days. But Duke Tobin last week, when they were speaking to the media, and again, I get a little nervous when Duke and Mike start talking to the media, but he dropped a great quote. Probably my favorite Duke Tobin quote behind "Go get your own wide receiver," when teams were asking about trading for T. Higgins. So Duke Tobin said, "I don't blame Shemar. He's listening to the advice that he's paying for. I don't understand the advice, but I believe we're treating him fairly." So I have never met Shemar's agent. I wanted to. I invited him on the show. Talked to, I don't know if it was him or a secretary, through email a little bit. And I know that there were other Bengals media outlets that invited him on that he was going to get on their show, and he kind of ghosted them. Invitation's still out there. That's I'm not here to, just crap on Shemar's agent, but he did a very poor job, in my opinion, of explaining what was going on with his side. And he just let the Bengals kind of take over. So the ultimately, what it sounds like is this whole debate came down to one little clause, a paragraph, maybe even a few sentences, not even a paragraph, clause that 20 other NFL teams at least have in their contracts that basically says, based on what Mike Brown said, if you're sitting in jail, we're not going to pay you, which is a fair argument, I think. If I go to jail, my job isn't going to pay me. My job isn't going to pay me if I stop showing up for work, right? So, I think that's a fair thing. And so then people were asking, well, why did you draft a guy that you think is going to end up in jail? And I don't think that's what happened. I think what more likely happened is that the Bengals have been trying to get this clause in for a while, which some have suggested they tried it with both Miles Murphy and Amarius Mims, and it just didn't work out. And both those times are kind of just like, okay, whatever, we'll try again next year. But then they drafted Jermaine Burton. And I like Jermaine Burton. I hope he has a breakout year this year. Seems like he's gotten stuff together. But last year, he objectively had issues going on. He was, having run ins with the law. He was getting kicked out of apartments. He was missing practices. And I think part of that influenced, whether directly or indirectly, whether how hard the Bengals were going to, just go in on this. Shemar Stewart, you need to have this in your contract, because I don't know if it's in Jermaine Burton's contract, but I wouldn't be shocked if it isn't. And that kind of, just was where things kind of got messy. And so Shemar didn't want it in his contract because obviously, he wants his money. He doesn't want ways to avoid it. And that makes sense. And it makes even more sense in the context of what's going on with Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins is suing the NFLPA because the Raiders, or not, excuse me, he's not suing the NFLPA. That'd be stupid. He's suing the Raiders through the NFLPA because the Raiders are trying to void his guarantees. So I completely get where Shemar is coming from. That being said, I think it was horribly explained by his side and was very confusing, and they let a lot of rumors get in the way of that. So Shemar Stewart ended up agreeing to the clause. So the clause is in his contract. Let me be very clear, because this was another rumor that got started. This is not a new thing to the Bengals. Abdul Carter has this in his contract. Campbell with the Eagles has this in his contract. Pretty sure that both Walter Nolan and Gray Zabel, who were taken before and after Shemar Stewart, have it in their contract with the Cardinals and the Seahawks as well. So it is not a new thing. It's not revolutionary. It is just new for the Bengals. And they wanted to set that precedent for their team, which they did. That was the other thing. They set the precedent with Demetrius Knight, who, I love. I love Demetrius Knight. They set that precedent, and they said, look, he agreed to it. He's our second round pick. What are you going to do? And I think they had to give him like 75% guarantees. And it was the first time like the 49th overall pick had ever gotten this contract that high. So it was a good contract for Demetrius. And again, I'm excited about that pick. I'm more excited about Demetrius than I am about Shemar. That being said, we are not going to knock on Shemar anymore. Shemar is officially a Cincinnati Bengal. And his contract details, he got a 4-year, fully guaranteed $18.97 million contract, which includes a $10.4 million signing bonus, but also has that clause in it. And apparently the compromise for this clause, and it sounds a little silly in the grand scheme of things, was $500,000 that was going to be paid to him in December, got moved into his signing bonus and got paid to him yesterday. So $500,000 is what it took, and a fully guaranteed contract. So, I mean, it makes sense though, because like if he got hurt in like November, then he might not get his signing bonus in December, and he wants his money now. Completely understand. Again, we're not knocking Shemar Stewart anymore. He's going to be a Bengal. I wasn't super excited about the draft pick, but you know what? He's going to come out. He's going to have 1 million sacks. He is an athletic freak, and I've always said that. His athletic profile is great. His college production isn't there, but his athletic profile is phenomenal. If he can, turn some of these rushes into sacks and these pressures into sacks, he will be great. So ultimately, I think that the Bengals won this deal because I think in the long term, it's going to pay off for them. Because they were going to presumably have to pay out the $19 million or $18.97 million anyway. Assuming he plays well, he doesn't get hurt, he is what they expect him to be. They're going to have to pay that anyway. However, they've been trying for years to get this clause into a contract, and now they have a precedent for it. And that's ultimately what the Bengals wanted. They wanted to set the precedent. They wanted to establish the culture, what is expected of their draft picks, and they were able to do that with Demetrius Knight and Shemar Stewart's contract. Um, so what they have to pay him his money earlier, which I guess is a win for Shemar Stewart, but ultimately, like, I don't think this was ever about money. I really don't. Um, so I'm gonna declare the Bengals front office the winners here, in my opinion. I think both sides came out happy, which is always good in negotiation. But I think Duke and Katie and Mike they got it done. I'll give them this one. I will clap for them on this one. I am a little part of me that's sad. Miles Murphy had a great practice last week, and I want to see more of Miles Murphy. I hope that even though Shemar Stewart and hopefully Trey Hendrickson are playing this season, I hope we see Miles Murphy. He had a snap that was on Twitter. He pushed Burrow out of the pocket, and it would have been a coverage sack. The secondary had him locked down. It was good. So Miles Murphy, I'm rooting for you. I want to see more of you. You were a first round pick for a reason. You just need a chance, man. But that's the Shemar Stewart situation. Next up, we got Trey Hendrickson. Got to get that deal done, and that deal, I believe, is about the money. At least the amount of years guaranteed. So Duke, Katie, Mike, you won Shemar Stewart. Go out there and win with Trey Hendrickson as well and make Trey happy so that the Bengals can have 1 million sacks this season and win a Super Bowl. I appreciate you all for stopping by. Let me know what you think down below about this contract. Do you think Shemar Stewart won? Do you think the Bengals won? Do you think no one's a winner? Let me know down below. I appreciate everyone who has subscribed. There's a lot of people who haven't, though. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the year, and every one of you helps that cause. Until next time, go do something nice for someone.